Well, hey, worship leader and worship teams, if you haven't seen this resource, one of the things that we're trying to do is to get better at helping you prepare for the services and so we can all have the services kind of roll out better where we're just more intentional than we've ever been about reaching unchurched people and then moving them towards experience with Jesus. And so that falls to me to help you get better prepared. And so this video format is something that the whole team can watch or just the worship leader can watch, but it's designed just to kind of walk you through and give you a better understanding as you're trying to come up with ideas as worship teams on how to handle the service, what that could look like, just to kind of spur your creativity a little bit. So my job is just to kind of give you a feel for what we're doing. The series is The Greatest. It's talking about if love's the greatest thing, then we ought to be seeking to be great at the greatest things. The whole idea. We're in 1 John chapter 4, verse 7 and following. And as a team, if I were you, I would read that all the way through, just out loud and pray over it and think about it and let that kind of just get inside your system. I think it's a very good practice and pray that you would live that. You guys aren't, you're not just there to play music. You're there to lead people in worship, but you're also there to lead them in worship in such a way that kind of prepares their heart for what God's going to be speaking, not only through the sermon, but through what you guys are going to say, what the campus pastor is going to say, and what the service is going to say overall, what the Spirit's doing. And I believe the Spirit really wants to do a job in our church of helping us to love each other, because as we seek to reach people who are far from God, Jesus said, they'll know you're my disciples by your love for one another. And we just want to get a lot better at loving one another as a culture. Now, I'm going to read you the passage that we're going to be dealing with on January 10th. It's found in verses 7 and 8 of chapter 4 of 1 John, and then 19 and following. It says this: everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. It's a pretty remarkable statement when you think about it. Later in verse 19, he elaborates on this. He says the same theme again. He says, we love because he first loved us. Whoever claims to love God, yet hates his brother or sister, is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they've not seen. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love his brother or sister. I mean, it's pretty hard-hitting stuff. And it's getting after this whole idea that there's a lot of people that claim to love God and claim to think he's awesome and everything, but they show it in exactly the opposite way. And Christians have a reputation for doing that, of being very unloving. And so the three fundamental points that we're going to be dealing with that day are people... Let's first not give ourselves permission to be unloving. Because what it said was, if you claim to love God, love better be showing up in your life. And a lot of times we as Christians, or those who claim to be Christians, give ourselves permission to not be very loving at all. It expresses itself in everything from what we post on Facebook to how we treat people, especially behind their backs or just in the church. A lot of us have had bad experiences and stuff, and it's not okay to be just an unloving jerk and claim to be a believer. There's something going on there that he says if you claim it and not doing it, you're a liar, which is pretty hardcore. So obviously some of this message is going to be pretty hard-hitting. And the second thing is love real people. You notice that he said, you can't love God whom you haven't even seen if you don't love your brother or sister whom you have seen. And we're going to be unpacking that kind of. I think it comes down to real people. God is the ultimate separate person. In other words, a big problem that we all face when it comes to love is we automatically assume we do it because we feel loving. We feel loving towards people in general. Well, I'd give anybody the shirt off my back. Okay, but what about that dude that really gets on your nerves that's just right over there? Don't look at anybody on your team, right? It's about loving real people. I think everybody feels loving, but when the challenge comes to really love a real personality that's outside of yours, that's where the challenge really is. That's the challenge of marriage. That's the challenge of workplaces. That's the challenge of church. So we're going to go out and work on that. And finally, you have to realize it's a test to see whether you've experienced the love of God. Because the love of God, and where we're going to finish up on this day, is It says, anyone who claims to love God but does not love his brother is a liar. We love God because he first loved us. The kind of love that it's talking about is directly related to the kind of love that God gives us in Jesus. And that is a love that's filled with grace. In other words, the test of whether or not you've really received the undeserved love of God is seen in how you give people undeserved love. Because if you've experienced it from God, you'll tend to give it to people. So that's how it works. That's the idea. So anyway, creative ideas around that. Some of you could talk out of, or you could illustrate things out of hurtful things you've experienced from others. Or if you really want to be daring, somebody could talk about hurtful things that you've done to others in church, disillusionments that you've had, or maybe some things like that. So we'll be celebrating love, but that day would be kind of one of those introspective things. Lord, have I experienced your love in such a way that I'm giving love to others? That's kind of the idea. And that's a little bit more, it's maybe a little bit more vague than some of the others, but look over those passages, pray over those passages, and kind of see what you guys come up with. And please, on these, let me know if I can flesh anything out.